8th of April 2020. Today is Wednesday of Holy Week. Our Gospel reading today is John 13, verses 21 to 32. Jesus foretells his betrayal. In this particular Gospel reading, Judas, a disciple of Jesus, is the one who we all hate and love to hate. Judas has received all the criticism, judgment, and execution. We are all able to quickly identify with betrayal, be it family, friends, bosses, government. We have all experienced betrayal of some sort in our lives. Betrayal is the most painful and hurtful. It cuts deep like a sharp knife does. It is so because we once would have valued the one who would betray us. And Jesus' betrayal by Judas was no different. In Psalm 41 verse 9, the psalmist had predicted then, "Even my close friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted up his heel against me." This prediction meant that Judas fitted into the divine Master's plan. Psalm 55 contains further prophecy of Judas and his betrayal. Imagine Jesus speaking these words, "It is not enemies who taunt me. I could bear that. It is not adversaries who deal insolently with me. I could hide from them. But it is you, my equal, my companion, my familiar friend, with whom I kept pleasant company. We walked in the house of God with a throng, with speech smoother than butter, but with a heart set on war, with words that were softer than oil, but in fact were drawn swords. Cast your burden on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved." Psalm 55. What if Judas did it because he no longer believed that Jesus was God's chosen one? Or what if Judas did it because he forced Jesus' hand to make him use his power to prove he was the Messiah? Whatever the reason, it caused deep anguish within the heart of Jesus. Jesus said he became troubled in his spirit. Jesus was not only betrayed, but now he was also troubled in his spirit. Means the hurt is embedded deep within. Why? Maybe because of the unrequited love of Judas. Maybe because of Judas's ingratitude, his ungrateful heart. He was troubled because he had a deep hatred of sin, and sitting at the same table with him was sin incarnate. Maybe Jesus was troubled because of the hypocrisy of the one about to betray him. Maybe he was troubled because he knew Judas faced an eternal destiny in hell, and it pained him. He was troubled because he could see with his omnipotent eye that Satan moving around in Judas. He was troubled because he sensed all that sin and death meant. But perhaps, most of all, he was troubled because he had an awareness that Judas was a classic illustration of the wretchedness of sin, which he, Jesus, would have to bear in his own body on the next day. Jesus knew all about the betrayal, and still, for 3 years, he showed love to Judas. If he had treated Judas any differently from the other disciples, if he had been more distant or shown any resentment, they would have known immediately that Judas was the betrayer. If Judas harbored any bitterness for what he knew Jesus would ultimately do, it would have come out in the way he would have talked to him. But evidently for 3 years he had been gentle, loving and kind to Judas, treating him in exactly the same manner he treated the other 11 disciples. In fact, they thought of him as one of their own. They trusted in him because Judas was the treasurer of the group. But Judas had a hard heart, and he played his game well along the way. His behavior reflected that of a saint, and his heart that of a sinner. Jesus knew from the beginning that Judas would betray him. And of course, God knew it from eternity past. And we'll find that in John chapter 6. Satan thought Jesus' death would end his mission and thwart God's plan. Satan, like Judas, and in using Judas, didn't have a clue that Jesus' death was the most important part of God's plan all along. Jesus, also realizing that his time with his disciples were very short, he would soon be in heaven, and so he took the final opportunity to share what was most important with those who would carry on his work. They would be the ones who would lead the church, and the one thing that could ruin them before they got started was strife. And however, if they would love one another, they would remain unified and strong. And so Jesus commanded them to love one another, saying that their love would be the identifying mark that they were his disciples. Through these past few days, we have been talking much about the uncertain times we're living in, the bizarre time that we are living in, lockdown, coronavirus, the deaths, the number of people affected and infected, the economy. But God still loves us. And through that love, he continues to crucify himself on our behalf. Jesus' hurt and pain of betrayal was because he loved, not because he hated. It is because he loved. Jesus knew all of it, and he still went to Calvary for us. He suffered that hurt and pain, but he still loved. He was betrayed by humankind, and he still gave his life for all of humankind. And today we may have many betrayals in our lives, but we think of Jesus' greatest betrayal, and we think of the love that he still gave, the love that he became on that cross, the blood that flowed from him. Love. God is love, and Jesus was the ultimate sign of that love for us. You see, Jesus didn't suggest that we love one another. He commanded it. And the standard by which he said we should measure our love for one another is by his love for us. And that means we should really love each other from our hearts, and proving our love through our words and actions. Love one another as I have loved you. Amen.